I hope you enjoy. Hi, I'm Jennifer with True North Leatherworks, and I am here to show you a short tutorial on how to stitch our campfire mug kits. We have a half pint size and a full pint size. The process is the same for either one, just that the pint size will take a few more stitches to finish because it's a little larger. But you will go from this kit to this mug cuff that you stitch yourself, and they fit over just your standard mason jars. I do show two views of how to stitch, one with the camera in front and then the second with the camera above my hands. So make sure that you stick around for the second view, because that is the one where the camera is above my hands, and that one's a little bit closer in case you aren't able to see everything in as much detail from the front. I also show from above. I hope you have a great time stitching your project. Okay, are you ready to make your campfire mug? This video will show you how to do either the half pint or the pint size campfire mugs. The stitching's the same. The full pint one, it just takes a little bit longer because there's a few more holes. But regardless, it's the same process. So I am just going to pull out the leather. Each kit contains the leather with the holes already punched for stitching. And your handle is already riveted on. And then I've got a piece of thread and a needle. And the needle has some washi tape on it so that you don't lose it. So I'm just going to pull the tape off. There we go. And here we are ready to get started. Now before we get started. Okay, for this project, we are going to make X's as we connect two edges together. And on the inside, can you see? On the inside, we're looking to go straight across. That's what our stitches are going to look like. Now, of course, you could stitch it another way, but this is how I'm going to show you how to do it. Okay, so first we are going to take our needle and our thread, and we're going to put the thread through the eye of the needle. It is a nice large eye. Then we're going to lock the thread into the needle, onto the needle really, by poking the point of the needle through the thread once, and then twice right there. And then we are going to pull the thread down like that. And now your thread will not come off your needle. Okay, now we want our knot on the inside, so we are going to poke our needle into the bottom hole from the back so we come out the front. Leave a couple inches tail there. And then, because we want to make an X, what we're going to do is we're going to angle our stitches up, and then we will angle our stitches down as we come back. So we're going to go up and then back down. So it'll make sense once I start stitching. So because I'm going at an angle, I am not going to put into the first hole, I'm going to go into the second hole. And then actually, I'm a little bit lazy, so at the same time, I am actually going to come out the second hole on the other side. So just hang with me a minute. I feel like this is a good way to get this started and keep everything in place, because you want to keep the holes properly lined up. So I will usually do about 3 or 4 stitches just like this. I'm not pulling it super tight because I'm going to adjust everything in a minute. Okay. Now, you can see I've got 4 stitches here. I'm going to pull Just gonna check my threads, make sure they're not super loose. But I'm also not gonna make them super tight either. Make sure I've still got a nice length to my tail. And then from here, I'm going to continue. Now I could continue to go in and out like I was, but then that kind of does that. You can also push the needle in from the front and pull it out like this. Now, there we go. So say if you're having a hard time getting your needle pushed in from the back, then try poking it from the front, poking that hole, and that'll open it up a little bit more, make it easier to push your needle into the hole. Okay, so you can see I'm adjusting it, making sure that my edges are lined up. Now again, there are other ways of doing this. This is just the way that I am showing in this particular video. It's easy, it requires just one needle. A lot of leather work, hand stitching requires 2 needles, but this is easy and doesn't require a lot of practice or even manual dexterity. Okay, so you can see I have a row of angled stitches. And I also have an open hole at the bottom and at the top. Now if you look here in the back, you can see I've got a nice row of straight stitches, which is because I've got the angled stitches here. So now I'm going to come out that top hole, and now I'm going to start working my way back down. Now, if you're ever not sure which hole you're supposed to be going in and out, you can take a look at the back and see what the back looks like. You should always have those straight lines. If they're not straight, then you should really go back and pull your stitches out and try again. Maybe a little bit frustrating, but it'll give you a nicer finished product if you take the time to do the stitches properly the first time. Okay, so I'm gently pulling the thread as I stitch. I don't want it pulled so tight that everything puckers up, but at the same time I don't want it super loose because that looks sloppy and it won't fit as well around your jar. Oops, there we go. And like you just saw me do, sometimes the thread will catch around the handle or an edge, but you just undo it and keep going. Now with the half pint one, you will see when I change the camera angles that this is a little bit more challenging to do. You can see I'm sticking my whole hand in here, which you won't necessarily be able to do with the half pint. But that depends on the size of your hands. But there's ways of working around that. So I've moved it around so that I'm coming in from the other side where it's not so snug. Okay, so here I am. Okay, so you can see a nice row of X's, and if you look, oops, you can see my overlapped a little bit, so I'm just going to pull that out. And now you can see that I've got a nice row of straight stitches on the back. My X is there. I'm going to double check that I'm pulled snugly. And then on the back, on the inside, I'm going to just do a square knot. And that one I'm going to try to do as snugly as possible. The wax thread does tend to slide around a bit, so even if it's not quite tight, if you just pull, it should tighten up. And then I'll snip the threads. You can see I've got the threads poking out there. And then we want to melt them to keep that knot in place so it doesn't come undone. Kids, please make sure that you have proper parental supervision for this. Don't want you catching anything on fire. And be careful, as you can see that as I melt it, I'm touching it to push it down. It's very easy to burn yourself, so be careful. Make sure you ask for adult help with that. And here we go. We have our pint size campfire mug cuff that we will put on a jar real quick. So here we have our pint size mason jar, and we will just put our cuff on it. Should be a snug fit. And leather does stretch over time, so that's why you want to make sure you're starting out with a snug fit to begin with. And it can easily be removed for washing your jar or whatever. And here you go. Put some hot chocolate in it, some tea, whatever your preferred beverage is. There you go. Project that you made. And just hang in there. I will be switching the view of the camera so you can see from above what I was doing. I'll redo it and show you another view of the stitching. Okay, now I'm going to show you again how to do a campfire mug cuff, but I'm going to show you from above. This time I am doing the half pint cuff, but as I told you before, it's the same process regardless of the size. Okay, so I've got my leather with the holes pre-punched and the handle already riveted on. I've got my thread and my needle with the washi tape on it so it doesn't get lost. I'm going to pull that washi tape off, and then I'm going to get started. So first up, we're going to untangle the thread. There we go. Got a little bit of a knot. Gonna undo that. There we go. Okay, so we are going to thread the eye of the needle. It's a pretty big eye, so it shouldn't be too difficult. And we're going to lock in the thread to the needle by pushing it through the eye of the point of the needle through the thread, and then we'll do it one more time right there. Okay, and then we're going to push it down the length of the needle, go like that, and then we're going to tug, and that will lock our thread onto our needle, so the thread doesn't slip out while we're working, because that would be annoying. Now on the campfire mugs, I do usually start at the bottom and work my way up and then work my way back down, just because I feel like there's probably more stress on the cuff at the top than at the bottom, and because we're knotting the thread at the bottom, I feel like that's the weaker point. So that's why I start at the bottom. You could start at the top as well, just that's what I do. Okay, so I went in from the back on the bottom hole. I'm leaving a tail of about 2 inches or so. I went in the first hole, and then on the other end, you can see I'm holding it in a circle. I'm going to go in, I'm skipping that bottom hole, and I'm going to go into the second hole so that I can start my diagonal stitching. I'll pull that a little bit more. That's a good tail. Okay, and then these first couple stitches, it's a little harder to keep everything straight, so I am actually folding it over like this. This line keeps my holes lined up, and then it makes it super easy to go in and out. Okay, I'm not going to pull it tight because we'll have to reposition everything in a second. But for now, so a good way to get it started. I do that for about 4 or 5 stitches. Okay, and then here you can see I'm going to start repositioning everything. Pull my tail, make sure it's not too loose. One way I do that is by putting my needle here and then just kind of pulling. And I'm hanging onto this end so that it's not, the tail isn't pulling out. And that allows me to snug it up, because at this point I do want it a bit snugger. But I'm also making sure that I don't pull so snug that it goes like this, because that's not the look we're going for. I mean, you could, if you like the asymmetrical look, but I am trying to get those X's. So I'm going to work to make sure that I'm keeping everything lined up. You can see it's a little bit slower doing one hole at a time, but honestly, it's not that much slower. Okay, and here I am, I'm at the top. Okay, I'm gonna pull, make sure my stitching is snug. This is really your last chance to check on that. Once you start crossing all these X's, it's going to be really hard to go back and snug anything up. Okay. That's actually probably too snug. You can see it's going, the edges aren't lining up, so I'm actually going to have to loosen that up a little bit. I snugged it down too tight. So I will actually just do this one stitch at a time. As I go back down, I'll snug it. Okay, so now you can see those nice straight lines in the back. That's what we're looking for, nice and neat and clean. Okay, and now I am going to start crossing my X's. So I came out this hole and I skipped this top hole and went to the second one. Okay, and now we have an X. And I'm going to go across at the back and down. Okay, I'm just going to check. Make sure I'm not super loose, not super tight. Now, if you're stitching along and you're not making X's and it's doing something weird, you can check your back, see what the back looks, check your front, see what that looks like. I keep getting hung up there. If it's not looking right, take the time to pull the thread back out and the needle and try to go back to where you went amiss and try to fix it. The sooner you catch a mistake, the easier it is to fix, and the nicer the product will look at the end. If you decide, I mean, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so for me, if I made a mistake and then just left it, that would just bug me. And it would, every time I used it, it would bug me. And some people, I know that doesn't bother. For me, it does. If you're also somebody who it bothers, then, you know, take the time to fix it and make it look how you want it to be. If it doesn't bother you, then, you know, you can just do your own thing. And if you're happy with how it looks, that is also fine, as long as you are happy with it. Okay. You can see how I flipped it from here to this side so that I had a better access to the holes, because I can't stick my whole hand in like I did with the larger one. Okay, we're down to the last row of holes. I'm going to pull that snugly. Okay, see I'm here. I probably could have left a little bit longer tail. You do want to pull the threads fairly snugly, like you saw. If you do it too snugly, it'll get out of balance. But if you do it too loose, it'll fall right off your jar too. So you don't want to do that either. Okay, and then on the back, I am just doing a square knot. I'm pulling it tight. Then I'll use my scissors and trim that. Okay, and here's where we break out the lighter. Kids, remember to have proper adult supervision. You could burn yourself, your leather, your house. As I melt the threads, I do push down on them. You could use the end of your lighter. That works well with the smaller lighters. I just tend to use my thumb just because it's easier for me. But I also end up with little burns all over my thumbs, the pads of my thumbs. So again, make sure you have proper adult supervision. And here we go, all done. So grab your mason jar, pull it up, nice and snug, and here you go. Ready for hot chocolate, tea, whatever your beverage of choice is. And if you're using a mason jar, you can put your lid on it, and there you go. Good job.